Good morning. Welcome to the online worship service of the Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I invite you to follow along in the order of service. We will put the link in the chat. Whomever you are and wherever you have come from, for this hour, we here are one gathered congregation and all are welcome. My name is Melinda Hughes. I've been involved with the Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship off and on for a little more than 20 years. I recently reinstated my membership and am excited to be this morning's lay leader. Our worship leader this morning is our own minister, the Reverend Jessica Starr Rockers. I'd like to welcome any visitors. Please introduce yourself in our chat box. We welcome more interaction with all during our after-service Zoom coffee hour. The link for our coffee hour will go into the chat next. You will need to use the password coffee with a capital C to be admitted to the coffee hour. The announcements are available on our webpage, www.kuuf.org, and our weekly email newsletter, The Candle. I have a special announcement this morning. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or new to Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, after service at 11:45, the Welcoming and Membership Committee is hosting a new to UU meeting. Reverend Jessica will be leading the discussion. The link will be in the chat. Please come and get to know us. We would like to start today by acknowledging that the land on which we all live is the Aboriginal territory of the Suquamish, the Sklallam, and the Skokomish people. They have lived in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's central Salish Sea for thousands of years. These tribes still live here and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. Now please enjoy Brian Kenny, Mike Menifee, and Alina Hemingway playing and singing our call to worship.
Sing a song with
join me in lighting our chalice. If you have your own chalice or candle at home, please light it as I share the words of Susan Gregg Schroeder's poem, Wings. Come along with me as a sojourner in faith. Bring along a sense of expectancy, a vision of high hopes, a glimpse of future possibility, a vivid imagination, for creation is not done. We are called to pioneer forth toward a future yet unnamed. As we venture forward, we leave behind our desires for a no-risk life, worldly accumulations, certainty of answers. Let us travel light in the spirit of faith and expectation toward our hopes and dreams. Let us be a witness to the future breaking in. Come along with me as a sojourner in faith, secure in the knowledge that we never travel alone. Our opening hymn, This Is My Song, also known as a Song of Peace, a patriotic song, is a hymn written by Lloyd Stone using the Finlandia hymn melody composed by Jean Sibelius. The two stanzas written by Stone first appeared in the 1934 collection Sing a Tune with a musical arrangement by Ira B. Williams. Please join in singing our opening hymn, This Is My Song, number 159 in the gray hymnal. The lyrics will appear on your screen.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
Please join me in the spoken affirmation. The words have appeared on your screen. We gather as a caring community, seeking life's deeper meaning. We value diversity and affirm the worth of all living things. We strive to speak truth in love, to act for justice, to grow in spirit, and to care for the earth. We celebrate with open hearts and minds the creative power that sustains and transforms us. Now it is time for our morning offering. If you would like to donate electronically, please click on the PayPal me link in the chat. You may then email admin@kuuf.org to let us know if your donation is for the KUUF General Fund, the Minister's Discretionary Fund, to help our members in need, or our monthly charitable giving recipient for the month of October, which is the South Kitsap Helpline. You may also send a check to the address on the screen. Please write in the memo line to which of the funds your offering should go. If this is your first time at KUUF, you are our guest, so there is no need to contribute. Let there be an offering to strengthen and sustain our community, which is sacred to so many of us.
Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space, its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all truth, its ritual works of love.
Well, good morning, everybody. Now is the time for our children's story. So I invite all of the young and the young at heart to sit a little bit closer to the screen for this part. I'm going to tell you the story of Fannie Lou Hamer, one of our activist ancestors who fought for voting rights for Black Americans during the Civil Rights Movement. Her birthday was this past week, October 6th, and since today we are talking about activism and it is voting season, I thought it would be an excellent opportunity for us to gain some inspiration from the story of Fannie Lou Hamer. And I'm actually going to share a photo of Fannie Lou Hamer so you can see what she looks like. So Fannie Lou Hamer was born in Montgomery County, Mississippi, during a time of segregation called Jim Crow. Jim Crow laws prevented Black people from going to certain restaurants, movies, libraries. Black people couldn't go to certain schools. They couldn't buy houses in certain neighborhoods. All sorts of laws separated Black people not just from white people, but from fair treatment and equal rights. Well, Fannie Lou Hamer's parents were sharecroppers, which meant they worked long hours on a cotton farm for very little pay. And Fannie, too, was expected to help, and so she began picking cotton when she was only 6 years old. And even though she was really good in school, she had to drop out at the age of 12 to help her parents make enough money to live on. She had also been diagnosed with polio, which curved her back and made working in the field really uncomfortable. Well, in 1962, Mrs. Hamer attended a civil rights meeting. She was 45 years old at this time. And this was the first time when she went to this meeting that she was ever told that legally she had the right to vote. At the time, Black Americans had the legal right to vote, and she had never been told this before, because in many southern states, it was still extremely difficult for Black Americans to access this right and register to vote. If they tried to register, they faced terrible violence. And then they were given complicated documents and literacy tests to read and understand. And often they were told that they didn't pass the test, even when they did. Well, Fannie Lou Hamer, when she learned she had the right to vote, she decided to brave this dangerous voter registration process. And she took a bus to the Sunflower County Courthouse in Mississippi. And there she was allowed to complete the paperwork, but she was not allowed to register. They told her she had failed the tests. When Mrs. Hamer got home, she was confronted by her boss and fired for having dared to try to register. He told her that Mississippi wasn't ready to give Black women the right to vote. After this, she dedicated herself to the civil rights movement. Within a few months, she began working as an organizer with a major civil rights group. She traveled around the South to educate Black people about voting rights. Her life was threatened many times, and she faced a lot of violence. In 1963, Mrs. Hamer was arrested in Charleston, South Carolina on false charges. In jail, she was badly beaten. The attack left her with permanent physical disabilities, and yet this didn't stop her from continuing to fight for justice. The next year, in 1964, she organized the Freedom Summer, and it was a major effort in Mississippi to help Black Americans register to vote. That same year, she gained national attention when she spoke at the Democratic National Convention, which we had one of those just recently. During her speech, she described the terrible abuse that she had received trying to exercise her right to vote. And she also explained that the Mississippi delegation had been segregated and she believed that it should be integrated. She said, all of this is account of we want to register and to become first-class citizens. And she said, isn't this America, the land of the free and the home of the brave? Well, Fannie Lou Hamer's speech was televised around the country, and the president at the time, Lyndon B. Johnson, tried to prevent it from being shown. But it became a key moment of the civil rights movement. And 4 years later, Mrs. Hamer achieved her goal, her and all of the folks from the Mississippi delegation. She joined an integrated delegation of Mississippi at the 1968 Democratic National Convention. For the rest of her life, Fannie Lou Hamer would continue to champion Black voting rights, and she fought for women's rights as well and for children's rights as well. And this fight continues even to this day. In this upcoming election, we are all working to make sure that everyone has the right to vote and that they can access this right freely and fairly, just like Fannie Lou Hamer fought for, just like she would want us to fight for. Her bravery and her courage inspire me and my activism, and I hope that they inspire you all too. Now, Fannie Lou Hamer was also a well-known singer, and she sang a lot of social justice songs. She was known actually for helping write some of the lyrics of the civil rights songs, the ones that had been gospel songs and then became civil rights songs. She wrote some of those lyrics. And later in the service, after the homily, we're going to hear Fannie Lou Hamer sing one of these songs, Fannie Lou Hamer herself. But right now, we together are going to do what we always do. We're going to sing another of her favorite songs, which we sing every week, which is This Little Light of Mine. I bet you didn't know that was coming. Fannie Lou Hamer let her light shine no matter what happened to her. Literally, no matter what happened to her, she never let anyone dim her light. So let's sing this time in honor of Fannie Lou Hamer and her birthday this week and all of the work that we are doing for equal rights for everyone. All right, This Little Light of Mine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. done. Thank you all for singing along. I know you were. Even if I can't hear you, I can feel you singing along. Well, now is the time in our service for our joys and our sorrows. Though we are physically distanced from one another, our hearts and our spirits remain connected. When shared together, our joys are amplified and our sorrows are lessened. If you have a personal joy or sorrow to share, I invite you to write it in the chat this morning. Tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples Day, and my joy and gratitude, firstly, is for all the folks from the Suquamish community and surrounding communities who worked so hard to make this an official day in Kitsap County that we can celebrate. So gratitude for the Indigenous people of this area, whose land on which we live. I was taught to raise my hands in gratitude, so I do that. And I also want to light a candle in our hearts for Bob Borquist, who passed away this week. Bob was a beloved member of this fellowship for a long time, and a dear friend to so many of us, and really just a wonderful, wise, joyful soul. So we just send our hearts out to Bob's family, all of his closest beloveds, and to Bob. We love you, we miss you, and we send you on your journey with our blessings. And now for our joys and sorrows in our chat. From Brian and Liz and Kay, our hearts are with Brian's mother, Carol Watson, who is in the ICU at Harrison Hospital. Well, we're sharing that sorrow and sending our healing blessings to Carol this morning. Bonner has joy for beloved Bob's transition. Bob was surrounded by his family and friends, and there's certainly joy to be shared in just the beautiful surrounding of love that he had at that time. Certainly. Thank you. Maya, joy for my wonderful parents. Oh, Maya, we share in that with you. Amelia, joy that it's almost Halloween. I certainly share that joy as well. I love Halloween. Bonner, joy for yet another heart, mind, soul inspiring Vespers service Wednesday. Yes, thank you. Samantha, please send out healing thoughts for my sister Kim in California, who had a biopsy yesterday and may have pancreas cancer. We are certainly sending our healing thoughts to your sister, Samantha. Healing thoughts to Kim. Jessica, sorrow for all our elders living in residences where they're not allowed visitors. Sending them our love. Definitely. Lena, Eloise feels great sorrow for her nephew who was shot and killed. Yes, we're sharing today Eloise's nephew, Jamil Hill, in New Orleans, was shot. He was quite a person in that area and was quite involved in caring for his neighbors, and it's a real loss for that community. So Eloise, our hearts are with you right now, and with Jamil's family as well. Genevieve, a sorrow for child and their family that is fighting COVID in our county, and another for TJ, who is fighting the same illness. Definitely for all of those fighting COVID. For our friends close to our heart, especially for TJ and Nathan and Lucy. We have a lot of joys and sorrows on our heart today, so let's just take a moment, just breathe together. all that we have lifted up, all that we share in as a community. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. May you who shared this morning feel the love of this community surrounding you and holding you close. All those whose joy or sorrow is too tender to share, our hearts are with you. May the spirit of life and love bring peace to us all. Amen, and blessed be.
When Fannie Lou Hamer said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired," she meant no more turn cheek, no more patience for the obstruction of a black woman's right to vote and plant and feed her family. She meant equality will cost you your luxurious life. If a black woman can't vote, if a brown baby can't be fed, if we all don't have the same opportunity America promised, she meant ain't no mountain boulder enough to wand off a determined woman. She meant, look, here at my hands, each palm holds a history of the 16 shots that chased me harm-free from a plantation shack. Look at my eyes. Both these are windows, these little lights of mine. She meant nothing but death can stop me from marching out of jail cell, still a free woman. She meant nothing but death can stop me from running for Congress. She meant no blackjack beating will stop my feet from working and my heart from swelling and my mouth from praying. She meant America. You will learn freedom feels like butter beans, potatoes, and cotton seeds picked by my sturdy hands. She meant, look, Victoria Gray, Anna Devine, and me in our rightful seats on the House floor. She meant until my children and my children's children and they, babies too, can march and vote and get back in interest what was planted in this blessed land. She meant I ain't stopping America. I ain't stopping America. Not even death can take away from my woman hands what I've rightfully earned.
Love is the spirit of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to sing
Well, when I was a young Catholic in high school, I went through the sacrament of confirmation, which is the coming of age process that a person goes through to become an adult in the Roman Catholic Church. In my parish, the process included several retreats called TEC, Together Encountering Christ. These retreats focused on how Christians live out in their daily lives what is known as the Paschal Mystery, the death and resurrection of Jesus. Catholic theology asserts that this death and resurrection isn't just a Bible story, but something experienced, something embodied. And one of the blessings of growing up Catholic is being taught to read the Bible metaphorically, like poetry. And the TEC retreat asks its participants to meditate on this poetry of death and rebirth as a metaphor for life. The 3 days of the retreat translate to the 3 aspects of the resurrection: death, birth, and the life everlasting. Theologically, of course, I no longer consider myself a Christian, but this metaphor of the continual process of death and birth doesn't just belong to the Christians. It is the story of our planet. It is the story of all life. And it is an experience with which we are all familiar. The pain when something dies, the process we go through of letting go, and the joy we feel when we see something new come to life, particularly something born out of the pain and the struggle. On those TEC retreats, I often meditated on the Bible verse John 12:24. Truly, truly, I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a seed, but if it dies, it bears much fruit. As a teenager, I wanted so much to let childhood die, let my innocence die, let my ignorance die, so that the fruits of my life, what I saw as my real life waiting for me after high school, could be born. But one of the things I learned at those retreats was how to grieve and to be generous with grief, to not be afraid of it, to grieve and acknowledge every loss with my whole heart, that this is key to fully realizing the joy of rebirth. And as the years have gone on since those days at TEC, I have continued to ask myself during times of trial and struggle, where is the grain of wheat in this moment? What must die? What can I mourn and let go to make way for that which must be born? This grieving practice helped me get and stay sober. It helped me leave abusive relationships and find real love. It helped me to remember to choose life, to choose living and loving over and over again. What must be released? What is ultimately hurting me, though I am sad to see it go? And what is alive? What is calling to me like fresh fruit, representing promise and blessings and health? I have been asking myself these questions again lately as I struggle to understand this cultural moment. So much of what we see around us appears to me to be like that grain of wheat. And I am asking, what is this that we feel is dying? What is this that is struggling for life, for flourishing? And how can we put our energy toward life, toward liberation, toward becoming the beloved community where all are valued and uplifted and given everything we need to thrive? In the book Activist Theology, author Robyn Henderson-Espinoza asks us to consider the theological relationship between rupture and becoming. Rupture and becoming. They write that rupture is any break or instability that emerges, and that if used productively, ruptures actually encourage our becoming. When our systems function to oppress and harm the most vulnerable in our society, How do we support human flourishing? And how can our activism support the becoming? Rupture makes way for becoming as death makes way for new life. We see it all around us in nature right now as we witness to the way the leaves go yellow and fall, the way the trees go bare, the way our harvest shrivels up and the plants die back, making way for new growth in the spring. It's integral to the rhythm of life. And we see it in our systems as well, in the way the current social uprising and revolution is painful and complicated, and simultaneously creating possibility where previously it seemed unimaginable. In 2019, we saw the first 2 Native American women elected to the House of Representatives. That same year, in Evanston, Illinois, the City Council passed the United States' first legislated and funded reparations program. And this year, in Minneapolis, after the murder of George Floyd, the City Council began the process of defunding the police department, shifting necessary funding from law enforcement to community health initiatives whose task is to mediate conflict. In so many ways, new life has indeed come from death. But let's tread carefully, lest we forget the ways these metaphors have historically been used as weapons. In her book, Proverbs of Ashes, UU minister Rebecca Parker warns us not to see sacrifice as inherently holy or necessary for love. Martyrdom isn't necessary for revolution. Human life is much too precious to let a theology of death translate into a disregard for humanity. We've seen how this plays out in politics. Religious fundamentalists are always willing to name someone else's suffering as an unfortunate byproduct of the saving of souls. So let's be clear on this part. Suffering is not inherently redemptive, and trauma is not always a precursor to transcendence. Sometimes it is just pain. And we can't afford to lose one more life in this country after losing so many for so long, to gun violence, to police violence, and now to the coronavirus. George Floyd should still be alive. In many ways, the culture of white supremacy, the system in which we all live, forces this dynamic. Some must suffer for others to prosper. But the beloved community rejects this theology. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold human life as inherently sacred. Everyone must be allowed to prosper. And the global majority must no longer be sacrificed for the greater good of the wealthy few. As we engage as activists with our theology, we must be clear on what we are talking about when we talk about life and death. We must be clear what we mean when we use these metaphors. Because something is very clear right now. Death is happening. And as we profess to value humanity over any system or any group or ideology, we can only come to the conclusion that if anything must die, it must not be our fellow humans. It must not be the marginalized, the oppressed, black and brown and trans folk who have been sacrificed for so long to uphold this system. We have to be willing to let something else die instead. So it must be the system. That's the choice before us, the choice that those in power are insisting upon. Either the system continues as it always has, continues to harm and oppress some while uplifting and protecting others, or it must all come crashing down. This is the binary with which we are presented. Thankfully, as Unitarian Universalists, we are learning to reject all binaries. And I'm not talking about a middle way, because I believe there is no middle way when it comes to fascism. But I think we can take some inspiration from our activist ancestors, like the indomitable Fannie Lou Hamer, and insist on claiming what we know is true. As UUs, we value each human life as inherently worthy, and we know that the greatest system, the one that supersedes all human-made institutions, the system that holds all of this life and death within its grasp, is the interdependent web. Our relationships with one another. This is the container, both literal and metaphorical, for the poetry of life and death that we see all around us. And as we grieve that which is dying, we choose the web. We choose one another. We choose humanity. How do we care for one another? How do we tend to the web? It is only in this container that the beloved community can be born. The system that will die was never our system anyway. It is not the system that endures. It was always going to crumble. And to Unitarian Universalists, there is life everlasting. The web of all creation of which we are a part. That is what endures. What survives this cycle of death and rebirth. Our very relationships with one another, how we care for one another, the web of life and love, this is what lasts. We put our trust in this, and then our resurrection story, you use, becomes one where the beloved community is inevitable. Robyn Henderson-Espinoza writes, "Central to rupture and becoming is the importance of imagination. And imagination is one thing we should herald as vital for the flourishing of all humanity and for the eradication of multi-system oppressions that fortify violence." As the grain of wheat dies and we grieve, we look for what is struggling to be born. What is calling to us? What deserves to flourish? This is where we go next. And we know we can't do it alone. We've learned this. We know we can't be siloed and separated, hoarding and self-protecting from a space of distrust and anger. We can't do it with hate. We can only do it through loving, through being open and giving, like that grain of wheat giving all it has, through poetry and metaphor and the creative imagination. And we can only be creative when we are in trusting relationships with one another and the interdependent web. And remember, as part of this process, we are expected to grieve, open-hearted and unashamed at what is being lost. We are allowed to be afraid, allowed to be who we are and feel what we feel without judgment. And then we allow that space inside of our hearts that has opened to make welcome what is being born. Our Unitarian Universalism calls us in this moment to listen to the prophetic voices of those people who challenge us to confront systems of injustice and to respond with the transforming power of love. Justice is what love looks like in public, Cornel West says. The ability for all humans to be alive and to thrive. This is justice. This is greater than any human-made system of oppression. And if those around us push to kill the system that is already killing so many, we must always be on the side of humanity. So let us be brave enough to have faith. Let us have faith in science. Let us have faith in nature. Let us have faith in the evidence of our interconnectedness, which is all around us. The story of death, rebirth, and that which endures isn't just a Christian story. It belongs to us all. May we always engage in the work of the world as our living theology, working to create more love and justice for all.
Woke up this morning with my mind stay on freedom. Oh, woke up this morning with my mind stay on freedom. Oh, woke up this morning with my mind stay on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Walking and talking with my mind.
Well, I invite you now to set an intention, as we do every Sunday, and choose your word for the week ahead. You can choose a word or a phrase that will inspire you for the week, keep you going, and something to share to resonate in all of our hearts. If you feel called to, you can put it in the chat, and I will read them aloud. Determined perseverance, faith and hope. Stay connected. Read KUUF's Candle newsletter. Definitely. That's a good way to stay connected. Keep on keeping on. Justice and love for all. Perseverance. Moving forward. Persist. Asking for forgiveness and surviving. Keep moving, but allow rest. Amen. Justice and work with purpose. Imagine and believe. Vote, vote, vote. We will do what we set out to do. Thank you, Maya. Awe. Vote. Grace. One step at a time. Connection. Open heart. I am brave. Thank you for that closing affirmation. I am brave. Let us carry that and all of these intentions with us this week in our hearts. And thank you everyone for sharing your intentions. And now for our closing hymn, The Fire of Commitment.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of full vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands
Well, thank you everyone for being here today. Please join us after this for coffee hour. The link and the password will appear on your screen shortly, and they will appear in the chat, and you can actually click on the link in the chat. Don't do it yet, wait, but it will take you right to coffee hour when it's time. And the password is coffee with a capital C. And the question for our small groups during coffee hour is, how does your Unitarian Universalism call you to work for justice? We also have a new to UU gathering after the service today for all of you who are new to Unitarian Universalism or new to Kitsap UU Fellowship, or maybe you just want to come and say hello and get a sort of brief history of UUism. Everyone's welcome. And I want to say one more thing before we go, to make an impassioned plea. November 7th, I believe, and everyone, yes, November 7th, just double checking, that is our annual auction, and it is an online auction this year that begins with a really fun Zoom talent show. We need donations of all kinds, we need talents of all kinds, and I encourage you to please read the weekly newsletter, The Candle. There is a lot of information in there on the auction. If you don't receive the candle, I invite you to email Tanisha at admin@kuuf.org to sign up. And if you are signed up and you see it pop into your email inbox on Fridays, consider it a spiritual practice to sit down and read it, to stay connected, to open your candle newsletter each Friday, read it top to bottom. We all want to stay connected with one another, and this is actually one really critical, important way. So, read your candle. Okay, thank you. And now, let us extinguish our chalices. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, faith is taking the first step, even when we can't see the whole staircase. May we go in faith, and not necessarily the kind that is called to move mountains. All we are asked, all the world needs, is the faith to take that first step, even when the whole staircase is beyond our view. And may we remember that none of these steps do we take alone. Amen. Ashe. May it be so.